In this video, I'll be going over how to install several different parts to an MFT friction feeder when you're unboxing it and getting it up and running for the first time. It's not uncommon for the parts that stick out the furthest from the machine to be removed for shipping in order to fit everything in a smaller box and make that a little bit more economical to ship. So those are the parts I'm going to be referring to in this video. I'm going to break it up into separate clips. So in the next clip, I'll be going over how to install the first part, which will be the product support rods. This is what we refer to at Multifeeder as a product support rod. Can't fit the entire part in the frame, but you can see it's basically a long stainless steel rod. At the bottom of the rod, it does have some bends, and it is ground with a taper to come to a sharp point. And then there is a composite bracket that holds the rod, and that's got two M6 fasteners on the front of the bracket. So to start, I'm going to loosen those fasteners until they are completely loose. Notice I'm still controlling that front part of the bracket with my hand there. So now this part can come free from the bracket. Okay, and that is going to allow us to mount the support rod to these two horizontal bars that you see at the top of the feeder's infeed. And I'm now going to reposition the front portion of that bracket and tighten those fasteners back in place. So for now, I'm leaving it loose, and the part can slide back and forth on those horizontal rods with that loose. Typically, that support rod is going to be positioned in line with a feed belt track. That's certainly not a rule, but it's kind of our standard guideline. And so after placing it in line with the feed belt track, then I'm going to fully tighten it down. And it is common for us to have a support rod for each feed belt track. So I do have two more of those that I'm going to install in the same way. And then I'll bring you around to the back of the feeder to show you just a couple more things with that part. I have installed the remaining two product support rods in line with the other two feed belt tracks. So you can see I've got vertical rods here, here, and here, directly in line with feed belt tracks here, here, and here. One thing I should have mentioned in the previous clip is the tool required to mount those. This is a 4mm hex key. You guys should have received a set of hex keys with the machine. It's gonna look a little bit different than this one, but they will function the same. So 4mm will loosen and tighten those M6 fasteners. Okay, so the one other thing I wanted to go over with this part is that it is possible to adjust the vertical position of these rods. So these ones are already set to the correct height, but it is possible to raise and lower those rods, and it is possible to do that in a way that can damage some of the wear parts on the machine. So essentially we want to make sure that that rod is high enough to allow clearance not only for the belt, so we don't want it to be so low that it's digging into the belt, but we also want to allow clearance for the product itself. So there should be a minimum of one product thickness, and that's going to change depending on how thick the product you're running is. But there should be a minimum of one product thickness between the surface of the belt and the bottom of that support rod to allow it to flow through. On the flip side of that, we also need to make sure that the rod isn't so high that it's rubbing on these parts we call stripper wheels. So these stripper wheel parts are set to one product thickness as well, or close to it, to where there's a little drag on a single product. So you kind of need to make sure you've got a balance to where the rod is correctly located such that it's not going to rub on the stripper wheel or damage the product or damage the belt below it. To adjust the vertical position of those rods, there is some fasteners on either side of these black brackets, and they do take a 3mm wrench to loosen and tighten. So there's going to be two on the bottom, and there's two that you probably can't see on the opposite side of the bracket up top. So if those were loosened, that rod could be lowered or raised freely. So with those positioned correctly, next I'm going to be going on to the magazine side plates in the following clip. This is a magazine side plate for a multi-feeder friction feeder. Again, too tall to fit in the frame of the camera, but it should look familiar based on the parts that I'm showing. So this part can be installed without tools. It's got star knobs on the front. So you'll notice that this bracket is essentially the same as the bracket for the support rods, except we do have these star knobs in place. So to install this part, we're going to do that same process of loosening both of those fasteners. Okay, and I'm going to remove that front part of the bracket. And so again, we're going to mount this on the horizontal rods. So there is a right and left side plate. So you can see there's a bit of a lead-in. So we just want to make sure that that lead-in is on the right side. So that lead-in should flare out from the center of the machine. So looking at this plate, you can tell that it's going to go on this side of the machine because that lead-in is flaring out. And also, there are kind of a little support lip on the inside of the plate. So that part is going to face in. So I'm just simply going to put that on the same horizontal bars and tighten that side plate in position. So where this part is located left to right is going to depend on your product. And that's something you can reference in the operator manual to kind of give you more guidance on how to locate that. So this will strictly be just showing you how to mount it. So there, our right plate is in position. And I will quickly show you the same thing with the left plate. There is no vertical adjustment to this part. So it is at a fixed height. And it will interfere with the feed belt tracks and some of the other parts on the machine. So you do need to make sure that you're not positioning it in line with anything that is going to prevent it from mounting properly. Okay, so there the left side plate is in position. And there's just one more part we're going to go over in the following clip, and that will be a magnetic catch tray. This is the last part I'll be showing you how to install in this video. It is a magnetic catch tray. So first thing to point out is there are mounting holes on either side of the catch tray, slotted mounting holes. So these are the holes that the fastener is going to go through to mount it to the feeder's discharge. And there are holes on the discharge that will match up with these slotted holes. So difficult to show you with the camera mounted stationary, but these slots should give you an idea of exactly where those hole locations are. So if I were to just hold the catch tray up like so, I can see that the mounting holes will be here, here, and here underneath. So our bolts are going to go straight up into this plastic bracket here. So you should have been supplied with 6 fasteners. I don't know if they were identical to these, but they should have been. We typically use these socket head fasteners. And to tighten those, I'm going to be using a 4mm T-handle. You certainly don't need to use a T-handle. One of the reasons that I am in this case is, one, it gives me plenty of clearance to get by the side of that part. And then 2, this is not a ball end, so I will be able to keep the fastener pointing straight up on that tool as I'm trying to get the threads to catch. So this is a lot easier to do with 2 people, one holding the catch tray and one doing the fastening, but it's definitely possible to do by yourself. So, so I'm just going to kind of hold the catch tray up with one hand, and then I'm going to line up the fastener so it's through that first clearance slot. And I've located the pre-drilled holes that the bolts thread into. And I'm just going to go ahead and tighten that up. Now in this case we are threading into composite material, so that hole will not be pre-tapped. It is just going to be a hole that's a little bit tighter than the diameter of the bolt itself, so that you're threading into that plastic, into that composite material. This one on the far side. Okay. So even without seeing the hole on the far side, I was just able to kind of feel for that hole with the tip of the bolt, and I've located it, and that is tight as well. And so there is some in-out adjustment on the catch tray. I can show you that since I've got to loosen this one up a little bit. So you are able to position this in and out a little bit. You've got a little flexibility there. I find that you just want it to be essentially flush with the tangent of this belt where it turns around this roller. So basically directly in line with where those belts end is kind of what I target. That certainly is not critical. You could be a little here or there. One thing you do want to make sure of is that you're straight with the catch tray, that it's not crooked. So just using any kind of straight edge as a point of reference on both sides can help you do that. But so I'm just going to install the remaining bolts the same way that I installed the first two. And so I did mention that we're threading into composite here. So one thing to be careful of is that you're not over tightening these fasteners. You essentially just want to tighten them until there's no play in the catch tray. And there should be lock washers with that hardware, so you can kind of tell when those lock washers are fully compressed, that then you've got the part fully tightened into place. This to the side. So this should give you a better view of where those bolts go. So my next slot is right here. And there it is. A little trickier. There we go. And I think I'm going to remove the camera from the tripod just to show you, give you a better view of this quickly. I'll show you that lock washer and kind of what it looks like when it's compressed. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Okay, so there you can see that you have a larger washer, what we call a fender washer. Then you have a lock washer right below that, and then the head of the bolt. And I'm just going to see if I can do this while I'm holding the camera here. So right about, I get a little more. Right about there. There we can see that there's no space between the different points of the washers and the bolt head. Try to get it to focus again, sorry. There we go. So yeah, so we just want to tighten until it's to that point to where there's no play in the catch tray in between the catch tray and that composite bracket, and that washer is kind of in there tight. So no need to tighten it beyond that point. Okay, so there is one more bolt I haven't put in yet, but I think that basically gives you the idea. So that's going to conclude this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you have any further questions, you're welcome to give us a call at 651-407-3100. Thank you.